Welcome, friends. Today I am speaking with Nick Griffith. He's a CTO from Arizona. I found super interesting his way to develop software and the approach he's giving to the product development. So welcome, Nick. Tell me, Nick, what do you do? Where do you work? What do you like about your work? What you don't like, and what can be an advice for people developing software?
Yeah, so my background is building lots and lots of micro businesses. So basically in the ad tech and marketing space. So I've been building companies in that realm for the past 20 years or so. And so I've learned a lot about how to launch companies from nothing really quickly and see if they work. Some do, some don't. You throw them away, you start again. That's one of the things I love about technology is it's a place where you get to launch new ideas, be an inventor, but there's no overhead. If you know what you're doing, you can launch it cheap, effective, see what happens, and then if it doesn't work, you throw it away and start again, and it's not even a big deal. So I've been doing that for the past 20 years now, and I've built some pretty large companies, just over the luck randomly hitting into the right ones at the right times. But yeah, I've learned a lot doing it.
Great. And do you have your own company, or are you working for customers, or working inside a company?
So right now I work for random people that have business ideas they want to do. They call me up like, hey, I have a great idea. I need someone to see if it works. What can we do? And they bring me in and I sort of build out the prototypes, the proof of concepts. And then if the business has legs, I join in more full time. If not, throw it away and on to the next one. So, people usually bring me in either to save companies or to start them out of nothing and see what happens.
It is amazing. How did you manage a company who is stuck into the go-to-market? They have a minimal product, as you said, to start with small pieces, but some companies invest too much in the first version, the first MVP, and then they struggle to reach the market. If somebody called you with a project in that stage, what would you recommend for that kind of companies? I'm asking you because it's something that I have seen it many times here in Mexico.
There's usually two challenges of startups, right? So it always depends on the founder. If you have a sales-driven kind of founder or a more product-focused person who doesn't understand how things are built, you usually end up with these businesses that are very nebulous. So no one really knows what it's supposed to do. They just kind of have this really broad idea and you kind of try to figure out what that is, or they plan out way too many features, not really knowing what's valuable or not. So the key to launching, a tech business is you really need to understand what is the one thing that makes you special and really just nail that, right? Don't worry about all the bells and whistles and all the things that you could ever possibly have, because at the end of the day, if you don't have that core feature that everyone's like, yes, this is the reason I use your technology, then everything else doesn't matter, right? You don't need the prettiest site. You don't need it to be with all the transitions and every kind of cool, like folding magical thing in the world. Like it means nothing if it doesn't work. So, that is sort of the biggest thing. And then I think a lot of other CEOs also don't understand that usually the prototype they built gets thrown away. So they end up trying to stay and hang on this really big thing, thinking, oh, I'm going to have this for the next 20 years. This is going to be, my platform. It's very rare that it survives. You have to have the right engineering team from the get-go to build a platform that lasts more than 6 months. Like it's usually a prototype that gets thrown away because after you launch it, you realize your business is not what you thought it was. And so you kind of have to build the prototype in a way where you understand that. You're just moving fast, you're finding problems, and you're trying to see what really the market looks like before you build the final version.
And do you think our role as CTOs is to help the CEOs or the founders to develop that resilience to the change and because it can be frustrating for someone who envisioned a whole business and features and everything like that, and then so everything starts changing, and the people and those people can think, okay, it's because the tech guys are changing everything and they are not sticking to the plan. You have experience with something like that?
Absolutely. I think the most important thing for a really good CTO is to have a deep understanding of business and product, right? That really is the key difference, because if you don't truly understand business and how to make it happen, you're going to just follow whatever the CEO says exactly to the T, but they have no concept themselves. They don't know what it takes to build. So you end up building yourself into a corner that you can never get out of again. And you don't have the ability to speak the speak to show the CEO, hey, if we just move a little bit to the left, we can get you something way faster that can prove it out. And this is really what matters, versus your grand vision is 5 years away, because the amount of technology and possibilities right now just aren't there. I think that is some of the most important features of a really good CTO, is just that deep business knowledge.
Yes, totally agree. What about methodologies? Do you like one on a special? Do you think every company is different? What about methodologies?
I think they're all just preferences. They don't really matter. In the early days, your method is just get it out the door. It doesn't really matter. You don't need all these like organizations and frameworks of how to, do your tasks and, all that sort of stuff, your product planning. Like, you just go, just run, just build as fast as you can, get things out the door, get them right, make sure everyone on your team understands the true vision of what they're building, and then you shouldn't need to micromanage. Like, all those things are for when you're a larger company and you have people that don't really understand what they're doing and they're just there, that you then have to explain to them every step of the way. You don't want that in the early days, otherwise you'll get crushed in management.
I agree. For example, methodologies like Scrum that became super popular. What I think is that it's a good initial step for large companies used to have a hard control, have managed, and then they can start losing some control and gaining some proactivity from the people, but still it's just a first step. Another concern that I hear a lot is, how do you deal with estimations? Are you into estimations, or do you prefer to go into the projections, or how do you manage estimation, and how would you control the expectations from the estimation?
I think estimation is a hard thing unless you've done that thing before, right? You're never going to be right. So, and the other challenge is, depending on the skill of your developers, your estimation may be a day or it may be a week, right? Estimation is definitely one of the most challenging things you can do. There's no good process for it, right? Like, you just kind of have to wing it, understand you're wrong, look back at what you estimated versus how long it took to build, and just adjust accordingly. I think once you have a deep knowledge of your tech team, you'll understand what it takes for certain features to be made by certain people, and then you can get better and better. It's really just understanding your team and understanding the challenges.
And you tell me, and this is for me, I want to learn, how do you manage a project? Something very roughly. What is your process, or do you have sprints, no sprints? What are your deliverables, or I don't know. Tell me, how do you manage a project? I want to envision how do you work?
It kind of matters on what the product is and sort of what stage you're at the company, right? So, like, if you're an early stage, you don't have a lot of customers, you're just building, you don't need sprints. It just constantly release, right? Like, every time you finish a feature, get it out the door, get it up, get people playing with it, just go, 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 go. It's not sprints, it's just constant releases. That's the best way to work until you get to the point where you now have enough users, or it's, external facing, where you have to be very careful and you have to explain what you released, right? Because a lot of times in the early days, you're just pushing out stuff just to see what happens. And you don't need to have like the tutorial video of how to use it and explanations of what it is. Like, once you start to get to that phase, that's where you're kind of forced to move into sprints, right? Because you can't just drop new features on users mid-click, right? And that's the problem with those instant releases. So usually I stay as nimble as possible, just launching as fast as possible until you hit that point where now you need to explain what you're doing.
I see. And how do you deal with the documentation? Is in early stage projects, is something mandatory, or do you believe that the code must explain itself?
I mean, you should be writing code in a way where it can explain itself. Mostly, if there's complex logic, always have some documentation and commenting on it. But again, like at the early stage, you're going to be throwing away most of it anyways, right? So spending half your time documenting, simple functions, it's not worth the overhead. You're going to be rewriting it all anyway. So just go, leave yourself notes of traps, leave yourself to-do markers of things that you need to fix later, and just try to move as fast as you can to get something out, right? Because if you spend all your time making it perfect, but you don't get it out the door, your company's dead anyways. So what was the point? So you just got to be lean and mean and fast in those beginning days till you have proof of life.
Well, my last question is, how do you deal, or have you been in this situation? Maybe you're not, but have you been in a situation where you need to deal with the VCs, maybe venture capitals, if your company are raising funding? And what is the role of a CTO in that important process of most of the startups?
The way it usually works is the VCs look at the CEO as the dreamer. They want to believe this guy has the dream, he has the vision, he has everything he needs to go and execute this grand plan, right? They want to believe in the CEO's dream, but they want to understand the CTO's ability to execute. So that's the difference, right? You are the executor as the CTO. So having proof that you can do it, that you can actually pull it off, that you can make nothing into something is what they look for in that.
Totally makes sense. I never heard that concept of duality between the CEO who is the dreamer and the CTO who is the doer. I think it's something very obvious that I had never seen before. Well, it's obvious now that you mentioned it. Okay, that's my question. Are you? You can ask me anything you want. What do you want to know about me, about the company?
Yeah, I think your vision of building a team of people for business people that have ideas to come and see it come to life. I think that's such a key thing, right? Because just in my experience, there's lots of people out there with ideas, relationships, some edge. And what they end up doing is trying to piece together a team or hiring some outsourced completely thing. And they had a great vision, they just had terrible executors. So it falls apart. And so there's so many really good businesses out there, they just need the right people to do it. And so if you can actually build a team and a company and a culture of we are the executors, we know exactly what to do, no matter what you give us, we can make it come to life, then you can actually create a really powerful incubator yourself of just people's ideas, because they're everywhere. Everyone has ideas, but the ones that have deals or some sort of exclusivities or some unlock that is different are the real winners. You can give them something to then go build that moneymaker that is just waiting to happen.
You're mentioning about culture, and this is something that I have on my mind, is because our role as providers, as you said, we are the doers. We need to make the market needs and the CEO dreams something real. But something that I've seen, and is the main reason of failure of companies that coming from the US, for example, to build product in Mexico, maybe it's the same in India or China, or whatever you want, is that they are unable to replicate their culture in the country, because culture is how companies do things, and it's what makes companies unique, and that is the main differentiator, in my opinion. So if you don't bring the culture to the country where you're expanding, if you don't bring that, you will have a very poor relationship based on task, doing down list, and the quality will be as much as good, but the real boost is that you don't have any contribution from your team, and it's something that I see a lot of companies arriving to Mexico. They want the developers for tomorrow because they are in a rush, and then they are saying, no, this guys doesn't work. And the thing is, to build a culture here is the same as building in the US. You have a good onboarding in your country, you need a good onboarding here. If you are a good place to work, you need to be a good place to work here as well. And inside, what I am focusing on is to help people to transfer the culture, the knowledge, and the technology into the team here. And sometimes it's a little bit hard to explain, because people thinks that I am just hiring developers. Hey, a body warm, a warm body. Here it is. And no, my focus or my view on this is that we need to create the teams here for your company. That will take time. Maybe not 3 months. It's not like we don't need a full quarter to give you one person or two persons. But we need to have we need to learn about your culture and your vision for the future to help you to bring the right people. And I think that's the challenge that I am facing the most. I am competing with a lot of companies founded or managed by recruiters, and they are super fast, stealing people, but they are causing the same turnover rate that we want to stop or to reduce, compared from the United States. The difference is that the United States have a super competitive ecosystem, and the turnover is because companies are stealing the talent, the best talent, super fast. In Mexico, we don't have that. What is making the turnover, what is making to rise the turnover in Mexico is the burnout of the people. Companies that arrive just task, delivery, complaints, and you burn out, and you burn the developer, you burn the company. So any advice you can give me of how to communicate this and how to explain it better for American companies is more than welcome.
So the big challenge is once companies get to a certain size, or you have people that are inexperienced in how software and product is built, they think engineers are just hammers, right? They're just a tool. I want 20 tools because 20 tools is better than one, and I can move faster. They don't understand what it actually takes of software and how artistic and visionary it really is to create proper stuff. So it's funny that you mentioned the churn. It's the reason that it's actually they churn in America is not because they jump jobs. It's because they give these engineers tasks, tell them nothing. The engineer half-asses it. It's a disaster, and then he leaves the next job, and then they just rotate them as they do bad, because no one ever explained them what it is, and the companies think of the engineers as replaceable assets. So they never take the time and effort to really get them on board with what they're building. So they half-ass it. They collect a $200 an hour, whatever the U.S. paycheck is, and then they move on to the next project before they get in trouble. And so it's kind of this churn and burn of those people. And what's really missing in all of this, and the way you actually make effective teams, culture is part of it, but it's actually vision, right? It's really getting your team to understand what they're building, why they're actually building it, and to think of the future of what it's becoming. Because if your engineers don't actually believe what they're building, if they don't know what that button really means, then they're not going to understand that that button actually does this, which does that, which does this, and prepare for the next 10 phases of this product. They're just going to make a button, and that button is going to have to be rewritten because the button just did the one button thing and not the 10 things that come after it. So really getting your team on board and passionate, and just enjoying being there and part of that vision is the key to it all, because without passion, they're not going to do the best job. And that's why everything always falls apart.
Yes, now that you mentioned that some companies see developers as machines, I think that's why most of the people think that AI will replace developers, because they are seeing developers as machines. And yes, AI can type faster than us, but it's just typing, and it will be super complicated to have a computer that shares and understands your vision and what you're building, because it's not just typing. I think it's a whole topic, speaking about how AI will really affect the software development company. It's not by replacing people, and now startups can save hundreds of thousands of dollars because they are using AI to develop instead of people. So do you have any comments on how do you see the AI participation in this industry?
So to me, software is an art, right? You have the really good artists, and they're the best engineers you have. And then you have the people that, they just turn out simple stuff, right? The AI will replace the simple people that build just the buttons, right? Because an AI, yes, can make a React button, but it can't do the artistic, deeper architecture parts of why of this button. It doesn't understand the businesses behind it to really do it. So I use AI in my coding every single day, and it is amazing when put in the right person's hands to get rid of all of the tedium, right? Because you spend half of your day doing the tedium instead of the art. You can get rid of the tedium and you're just doing the art all day. You now are going to be way more efficient and effective. So I think you're going to actually see a gap now of the really good engineers are going to become 10 times more productive, and the really poor engineers are just going to get replaced, right? They're not learning anything. They just lean on the AI. If AI doesn't know how to solve the problem, they're not going to get anywhere. So I think you're going to start to see a way bigger gap between the high quality and the low quality because of it.
Yeah. What do you think is makes a good engineer and a poor engineer a poor engineer? Because maybe it's not only experience. Obviously, experience matters, but I think there is something else.
It's passion is the number one thing. Just really having a passion for learning, wanting to do more, always wanting to do the best things. Like that's probably the number one. I think the number two is actually having business understanding, right? Having that business sense of the whys to things, right? I think those two are the biggest factors of someone who's going to be an amazing engineer or not. It's not, oh, they know all the algorithms or they know like this library over here, or they've done all kinds of different things. Like the smartest engineers that know all this interesting tech stuff, they're not necessarily the best, because what happens is they don't understand the business behind what they're building. So they go down rabbit holes to build the coolest thing. And the coolest thing isn't always the right thing. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges is understanding the whys behind what you're building and having the passion for making sure that why is executed amazingly.
And do you think that UX is part of this business understanding, or is that something that is out of our scope?
UX it's a part of it. It can definitely be challenging because it's not always the first thing a developer is really thinking about. Like I build very simple UXs to get things out the door that aren't pretty. It's just functional. It's just showing that it can be done. I think that more than just like the click paths, it's the whys behind the click paths, right? What are they actually trying to do? Oh, they're actually trying to run reporting, or oh, they're actually trying to get to this. Understanding that stuff, I think, is more important than just necessarily how they click through it. Hopefully, you have really good UX designers to make sure that the flows are always the best way. But I think that the biggest part, because UI can be changed fairly easily, that's not as complex as the underlying logics. So that's sort of why it's more important to understand what they're actually trying to do versus how they do it, because it's a lot harder to change that.
I see. Um, I don't know. Maybe I am thinking more on the UX as um, I think that UX is closer to the development team than the UI designers. Because UI designers, as you said, the UI can change from one version to another. The thing what we are solving and the path that the user will need to do to get the thing done is important. But if we can solve, but okay, I think that the best UI is no UI. So, but UI is is something necessary, not desirable. I think that the experience that we can create from our code and the backend, if you want to label it, it is important. It is as important as the UI. I think we can discard views and views of the system with a single change in the back.
For sure. I do think UX is going to change a lot with AI stuff. Like people are going to expect more automations and it to just do it for me. Like I imagine there's going to be a point where every system's UI is just a chatbot, right? Like it's probably going to get to that point where it's like, give me a report for this, and boom, there you go. So the paradigms for what we're building is definitely going to change. So to me, UX is like it's a tool, it's a selling point, it's a what gets them in the door to see the value you have. But it's going to change drastically.
Now you mentioned something that I really, a topic that is important for me is the future of work. Because as you said, poor developers are losing their jobs, but that's happening in different areas. And the thing is that most of the jobs that we have created for the past 15 years are in the manufacturing industry. And the manufacturing industry is adopting super fast the automation and AI and everything like that. So we will have a lot of people with a lot of skills, but maybe they don't know that they have it. So I started to create. It's not a chatbot. It's I want to make it more like a virtual assistant, not with a personality. I'm not interested in having a chit chat with a computer. What I want is, as you said, an interface like the Batman computer. It's not Jarvis from Iron Man. You can take philosophical chats with that thing. No, it's more like the Batman computer. Hey, computer, where is the Joker? Oh, he's over there. So to try people to help people to find jobs, because LinkedIn have 5 million of positions in the platform. It's impossible for a human to make to take a sample beyond their network, and maybe their network is right for the next job. So my idea is to have this virtual assistant there. It will be called Robin, just to have a name. Hey Robin, can you help me to find a job? For sure. What are you looking for? This, and focus on the cultural factors of the companies. Will allow Robin to scrap the 5 million positions and give you some idea where to apply. And the thing is, I'm not working for the companies like most of the human resources tools that are focused on getting the candidates faster. That's not important. I want to solve the life of the people looking for a job. So that project is something that is super open. I have people that is participating and helping me. We have an ethic group and everything like that. So if you're interested, I can invite you, and any advice you can give me to make this thing real. I'm thinking, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking to make this open source, if possible. So if it's something that is interesting for you, it will be great to have your advice, because I see that you are super forward thinking and you know how to get things done, and it's good to connect with people like you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always looking to help and learn new things. That's sort of the other fun part is every project or person I meet, they teach me something new, or I find some realm that I did not know existed, and I can see what's out there. Like that's the fun part of the technology world.
It is. Well, thank you very much for your time. Hope to meet you in Phoenix the next time. And it was a pleasure to know you. And your insights are super enriquecedores. I don't know the word so and so sorry for my English. I'm still
That's good.